This podcast is brought to you by Customplan Financial Advisors, Inc., an independent insurance managing general agency in Canada. Financialpodcast.ca was developed with one goal in mind: to educate Canadians on important topics that affect their financial well-being and make it readily available to all. We welcome you to plug in and learn with us. If you have questions, please email us at contact@financialpodcast.ca.
Hello and welcome to the Financial Podcast. My name is Gary Poyer. The Financial Podcast is brought to you by Customplan Financial Advisors, an award-winning managing general agency that provides exceptional support and resources to the independent financial advisor. Please visit customplanfinancial.com to see all the resources that are available to you as an independent financial advisor. Today we'll be focusing our topic on the discussion of retirement. But rather than looking at retirement from the financial perspective, we're going to look at retirement from a more philosophical perspective. And because it's such an intriguing approach to retirement, and because we have such an interesting guest, we're going to break our discussion into two podcasts, this one being part one. So stay tuned for part two. Now, speaking of our guest, we're extremely pleased to have with us Chris Burylo. Chris has an excellent background in leadership with a focus in the fields of finance, taxation, and corporate governance. Chris has recently been recognized by Business in Calgary Magazine as the top business leader in Calgary for his work as managing partner of Pinnacle Accounting and Finance and for his involvement in the business community. Chris serves as a director of the Public Business Accountants Society of Alberta, is president and director of the Foundation for the Advancement of Entrepreneurship, and a trustee in the Medallion Health Trust. But most importantly to us, Chris has been applying the same business dedication to his retirement plans, and he has made some aggressive plans to retire before the age of 40 so that he and his wife can sail the world. So we wanted to bring Chris onto our podcast to discuss some of his perspectives when it comes to retirement. Chris, welcome to the Financial Podcast.
Wow. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for that fantastic introduction. And it's amazing to be here.
Well, you're very welcome. You've lived a very impressive life, and we're happy to have you as our guest. Is there anything else that you maybe want to add about your background or your life to date?
Thanks. I think it's very interesting because I would always consider myself to be like an entrepreneur first, right? If I'm looking back at my history, and I appreciate that we're not talking as much about tax and money today, and those are subjects that I've talked a lot about in the past. I was reading an article recently. It was talking about I think the headline was something like the new flex of billionaires is like washboard abs or something like that. And the concept was that, you get these people who put intense focus into business or philanthropy or whatever it is. And, if you can take that same mindset and shift it, you can apply the same intensity to other areas. And so in the past, if I was, hyper focused on business or my education or whatever, I think I've been developing this immense interest in retirement and the philosophy and what that happens, and those are becoming more and more important things to me, and areas of focus and attention. So I think this is going to be a great subject for us to talk about today.
Okay, excellent. Well, let me then ask you, Chris, when you think about retirement, what is it that you think about?
Sure. So, for us, so my wife and I, we've been planning an early retirement. We intentionally do not have kids. We have a little 4-pound puppy who's really cute. We call him like our child. Mm-hmm. But we've been actively planning to buy a boat, like a large sailboat, and we're gonna take off and sail the world as sort of, we wrap up some of our business obligations here in Calgary. And so, for us, we've been, putting a lot of, thought and planning into that vision and what that means for us. And, the activities and, our own values. And, it becomes kind of a time to reassess who you are and what that means for you going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly have some ambitious retirement plans, but retirement has changed a lot over the years. It used to be that a person worked until age 65 and then they retired. But nowadays, people retire at any age before age 65, and some people work well into their 80s. So how did you and your wife come to decide to retire before age 40? And what are your thoughts on early retirement?
Yeah, what a great question, Gary. And I know like the idea of retirement, like the actual concept of retirement, I think like if you look at human history, it's actually like a fairly recent idea or recent concept. Like retirement itself like was just like like the idea of a pension just started to become introduced in like the late 1800s, people who are working in militaries or politics or what have you. And, they would put them into forced retirement at age 65. But back in those days, the life expectancy was so much lower. I think it was like the mid 30s. Like if you were living into your 40s or 50s, you were like considering to be moving into old age. So, the idea that you'd still be alive and working at age 65, I think would have been like a feat back in those days. And so, this idea where, we're now living longer and longer, and we're just, in like in our lifetime, finding that area where people are starting to surpass age 65 as like a normal thing, right? Life expectancy today, if you're born today, men are expected to live to 81 and women are expected to live to 84 here in Canada. And so it's like this idea that you'd have this life of leisure after 65 is a fairly new concept. But for my wife and I, we started thinking about, like when we started thinking about the idea of retiring early, like retiring before the age of 40. And one of the more influential parts to me for that idea, I think came from an early blogger, like a long time ago. He's still around. He's still quite popular. Mr. Money Mustache is his name. I don't know if you've heard of him, Gary. Anyways, he was a blogger, and I started reading about him probably 10 years ago or so, like when he became, popular. And Mr. Money Mustache, he retired at age 30 with, I think, $600,000 net worth. Wow. And, he talked a lot about, the importance of saving and the importance of, frugality. And, we're accountants, so we make good incomes. We're not getting rich over here by any means. We make good incomes. But, the idea of, if you manage yourself and manage your spending and, save and plan appropriately, that, there's this idea that maybe you don't have to work until age 65 or until you pass away. And maybe there is more to life than filing tax returns every day. As much as I want to say I love doing that, maybe there's other things that we would like to do. And so I think it just becomes this exciting idea. Like, okay, if I don't have to work all the time for money, well, what can we do with ourselves? And you just get to reapply into new and interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you and your wife first met, when did you first start thinking about retiring prior to age 40?
Yeah. So, when I first met my wife, Gary, like we started the accounting firm that we're working with, like pretty much together. I think I was in like the very early years of us starting the firm. This would have been like 2009, 2010 or so. And I remember my wife and I met. We didn't have money at all. And my wife was coming into the relationship with a little bit of debt and stuff like that. But money was always an important conversation to me. And I remember like early on in the relationship having conversations with her about, the rule of 72 and, compound interest and, how that can have, long-term meaningful effects. And, maybe you could say that, selection of your spouse is an important factor in what you want long term, because you're all going to have different values. And I suppose I came into that relationship thinking, long term financial planning was as an important element to that relationship. And I'm fortunate that my wife was, keen to get on board with some of those ideas. I know, like right now, if you look at like some of the statistics, something like 42% of people aged 35 to 44 are not saving for retirement. and 40% of people aged 45 to 64 are not saving for retirement. Those are American statistics. And I find that to be just like completely shocking. And so, if you're looking at yourself and you're saying like, hey, this is something that's important to me, how you have those conversations and those plans with, other people in your life who are important, I think becomes, an important part of that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, how did you and your wife decide what it is that you want to do? Sail the world.
Sure.
We came up with that idea, and
well, it was my idea, Gary. But I got to tell you, it was not for a love of sailing. Like, we did not wake up one day and say, like, man, this sailing thing is just like the funnest thing. But what we did came to the conclusion of was, you own your boat, and it's your house. Yeah. And you hoist up the sails, and our boat will have motors on it and stuff. But you hoist up the sails, and it powers you by wind, and you could go anywhere, Gary. And you park in the marina, you can drop anchor, on the shore, and that's your house. And so it becomes this like, it's this kind of interesting, cost-effective way to go and see the world in a way that's kind of sexy. And hopefully we'll have some friends and family that will want to come and stay with us. And so it's it wasn't for a love of sailing. It's a cost-effective way to see the world.
Yeah. Yeah, what it sounds to me is like the epitome of freedom, right? It's not the love of sailing so much as the love of freedom, right? You're your own captain of your life, right? And,
yeah.
Well, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, freedom from an internet connection, freedom from email.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay, Chris, let me then ask you, how important do you think it is for people to think about what it is they want to do in retirement prior to retiring? So during that person's working years, how important is it to have that vision of what they want to do in retirement?
Yeah, I know. I think you would agree, Gary. I think it's really important. If you get to your retirement, and if you have the diligence to say, okay, this is my retirement date, and I'm actually leaving the idea of where I have to work for money. If you're active enough to make those steps, then you're left with the challenge of saying, well, what is it that I'm actually going to do when I hit those retirement years? And part of that comes down to what your personal values and stuff are. But one of the reasons why I think it's really, really important is there's been a lot of research and studies like where people who work, and then they stop, and that's when they start to see their health deteriorate, and people who retire early are statistically known to have early deaths. And yeah, and wow. I think about if we think about your body as like a giant muscle, okay? If you go to the gym every day and you do this every single day, you'll have great biceps, right? And if you stop doing that, your biceps will degenerate over a period of time, and you'll have stick arms again, right? Yeah. And I think your brain works the same way. If you actively read or educate yourself, or you're engaged in your profession, you get really, really good. If you do math every day, you get good at math. If you read books every day, you get good at reading books. And I think like your body is just like one big muscle. If you stop exercising it, it's gonna degenerate. And so having a plan, having something that you're going to do post retirement. I'm not just talking about going stir crazy. I'm talking about like this is something that's actually important for your physical and your mental well-being.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I believe that everybody needs goals to inspire you and challenge you. And but I also think if somebody has a vision for their retirement, it can inspire them to actually save for their retirement because they know why. It's not like putting all their money into a black hole. They have a reason for doing that, and your reason why will always motivate you.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, so on the flip side, then, once a person is retired, so let's say you and your wife are retired, after you've sailed the world, then what?
We don't have a strong answer to that, Gary. I mean, we talk about, I mean, one, we don't know how long we're going to sail the world for. I mean, we're adamant that we sold our house this year in preparation of buying our boat. And, you know, we might be gone for 1 year. We might be gone for 3 years. We might never come back. And And I think, we probably don't have to make that decision right away. But one of the things that, I think is important to keep in mind when it comes to the idea of retirement is, and especially if you are choosing to retire early, is being retired doesn't necessarily mean that you never make money again. I think the important concept, the important takeaway from that is, you never have to make money again. Hopefully you've been, prudent and diligent enough that, you've saved, that you no longer have to go to a job that you don't like in order to earn an income. And I mean, if the markets go ways that you aren't expecting, hopefully you can come up with a backup plan or some backup strategies. But, just because we're going into early retirement, that doesn't mean that we might in the future not engage in maybe an activity we enjoy or a hobby. And if it happens to make money, so be it. But exactly what life in my 60s look like, I think we're maybe too early to make those decisions.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. But when you're sailing out there on the ocean, you might get an idea, like what's next, right? So, because some of the best ideas come to a person when you're relaxed and just kind of in a meditative frame of mind as well. So,
great point. Yeah. And like, how many times have we seen in history where, young people build like big successful businesses and sell them? I'm not comparing myself to these people, by the way, but they say, oh, I sold my company. I'm now like a super millionaire or a billionaire. And what do? They take a month off, they take a year off, they take 3 years off, whatever that is. And then they come back like stronger than ever. And all of a sudden they're doing stuff and they're contributing to society. And it's not that they have to, but that's like their own value system. That's what they want to do. They want to be contributors, and that can be part of our purpose. And I don't think if those people decide to go back and contribute to society again, I don't think we could say, oh, their retirement was a failure. They're just happening to find things that align with their own values.
Mm-hmm. Do you find, because you've dealt with a lot of business owners and professionals in the past, do you find that a lot of business owners and professionals focus so much on their career or their business that when they want to retire, when they're financially able to retire, they just don't know what they want to do?
Yeah. And I mean, it can be hard, especially if you have business interests and you have to like wind them down or sell them or what have you. But I think personally, one of the biggest challenges with that is, the further somebody goes in their working career, the better they are at their job, the more important or the more senior their role is, the more money that they're making. Mm-hmm. And it sort of becomes this thing of like, well, how can I retire? Even if I have enough money, how do I alter my life in a way so that I have the time to have a fulfilling retirement?
Yeah. You mentioned the word purpose just a minute ago. Have you ever found that a business owner or a professional will identify who they are with what they do? And if they step away from their business profession, all of a sudden they're at a loss of identity.
Yeah. And that becomes like a bit of a mental crisis, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I know you and I were talking a little bit about discipline earlier today, and how that aligns with what you're doing and what your purpose is. And one of the conversations my wife and I have had about like our sailing plans is like, while we're still here like managing our business interests, we are at the same time treating our sailing goals like it's our job. Like does that start to redefine who we are? And one day maybe people won't say, oh, Chris is that guy who knows a lot about tax, and it'll be, hey, Chris is that guy that sailed around the world. And maybe and we can change who we are over our lifetime, just because we've worked the same profession for 20 or 40 years. If you look back when you were a teenager, you weren't a financial planner, you were somebody else, right? You were the guy that played soccer or something.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and I think that a lot of people depending on their personalities and what they do, they see retirement sometimes as a finish line. But they cross that line and then they don't know what to do. They think life will kind of hand them some ideas as to what to do. But retirement, like, it can be a whole new beginning. Like, you and your wife, it's a whole new beginning for you. You're leaving accounting and finance, governance behind, and you're becoming a sailor, right? And then that chapter of your life might close and a new one opens up, and so I guess you just have to be open to what opportunity life offers you.
Right. And how exciting is that?
Oh, terribly, I think.
Right.
I think people sometimes tend to get caught up with the negativity of the world and the obstacles that are presented in front of them, the challenges. But opportunity is there if you're open to it as well. And I just think it's great what you and your wife are doing, like grabbing hold of life and trying something completely different. And look at the people you're going to meet, right? Like, you're going to meet probably lifelong friends that are just waiting out there to meet you. And you're putting yourselves in a position to meet those people.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, well, actually, you mentioned discipline just a minute ago. Obviously, when you and your wife are sailing, you're going to have that discipline of doing what's required in order to keep the boat afloat.
Right.
How important do you think discipline is in a person's retirement?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back to the idea of your body like a muscle. Like, if you don't do something, you're gonna degenerate. I mean, for us, we're thinking about what life like that will be on, and what we'll actually do with the time. I mean, there'll be periods where if you're sailing a large body of water, where maybe it's like a long car ride where you're tending to the sails for 6 hours or all day, and that's okay. But then at the same time, we're going to be making plans about we have to we're going to be entering different countries by boat, and we're going to be importing our little dog, and we're going to be having friends fly into major airports to see us, and the logistics of that, and how weather impacts our ability to travel. And I'm sure we'll keep some business interests while we're out there. We'll probably continue to do some board work and some activities and things like that. And so when you start to look at that, and what if people entering retirement, actually said, okay, my job now is to be retired, and what does a retired person do all day, and what does my schedule look like as a retired person, and you need to continue to plan your day, or who are you going to be?
You're going to drift. Right? You're going to drift from one day to the next. I mean, you and your wife might be drifting on the ocean, but you have a destination in mind, right? You have a direction in mind. Where I find a lot of people don't have that. But I just want to ask you a question. Somebody once said that things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least. How do you think this applies to retirement?
Yeah, what a great question, Gary. I mean, I think that comes down to what your personal values are. Like, what are meaningful values to you, and prioritizing what's actually important to you. Prioritizing your time and your financial resources and what have you. But like, your meaningful values could be things like your family, like your philanthropic pursuits, or figuring out. And these are deep questions. Like what is your why? Like why are we here, and why are we doing what we're doing? And you have to make those things important in retirement. For some people, I think the creation of work and contributions to society are important. And so if you said like, well, but for other people, those things aren't important. For other people, those things actually hinder their ability to pursue, family interests, or to create experiences, or whatever is important to them. And retirement's really neat because it gives you that opportunity to kind of reassess, like, okay, what is important to me? What matters the most? And you can make those things, on the forefront of your life. And I think what goes along with that is the ability or the understanding that, you can say no to things that aren't that important to you or don't add value to your life. And that's an important part of having a fulfilling retirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yesterday or earlier we touched on purpose a little bit. Are you a person that believes that you have a life purpose?
I mean, I think your purpose is what you make of it. I think, like nobody's assigned me a life purpose. I think, what your purpose in life is for you to determine, and nobody can tell you what's going to be meaningful to you. And, so, it's, that's a subject I think about, like inner thought and,
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard it said that and quite often in the clergy, for instance, a minister felt that he was called to the church, that that's what his purpose was, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or whatever the case might be. And other people have said you give meaning to the day yourself by what you do, and especially in terms of service. And as an accountant, you provide a service to the people, and so I just find the subject of purpose interesting. But one of the things that I think is that if a person hasn't thought much about their life purpose, retirement's the perfect time to do it, because you do have the time to consider and ask yourself lots of questions, and Wayne Gretzky, hey, he was a hockey player. Was his purpose to play hockey? Hard to argue that it wasn't, because he was so good at it. But if you asked him today, he might think that his life purpose was something other than to do with hockey.
Right. But I'll add that I think if you're feeling like your life purpose is to engage in a profession, I think I would also say that you have the opportunity to manage the expectations of the people around you. Like if you said, Chris, your purpose is to file tax returns, and I'd be like, well, yeah, I've got a stack of engagements here in the office, and there's a group of us, and we've committed to filing a bunch of tax returns. But we've held ourselves out, and we've studied, and we've said we're good at this, and yeah, we're going to commit to engaging in that service. But if one day we said, I no longer want to do that, well, I can wrap up those engagements, and somebody else in the office can help me, with certain projects and so forth. And we have the opportunity to redefine what that purpose is at any time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think of Florence Nightingale. She came from a well-to-do family in England, and yet she felt the need to go and help sick people, especially soldiers in the Crimean War. So. But I just always find the subject fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Okay, one last question here, Chris. Before a building is constructed, an architect will always prepare a set of blueprints. How important do you think it is for a person who is thinking about retirement to actually form their set of retirement blueprints in the form of maybe actually thinking about what they want, and then writing it down and kind of coming up with a schedule as to when they want to do it in retirement?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on a retirement blueprint?
Yeah, I think it's you have to do it. If you're gonna get to where you're going, you need to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. And that could be a financial plan. I do my own. I've been Excel sheeting and goal setting my own finances for a long time, and I have them all charted out, right? Because I'm a nerdy accountant. But in addition to that, like when we're planning our retirement, we're talking about, we weren't sailors before we decided to sail the world, and so we literally have schedules of, here are the courses we're going to need to do. And we got VHF radio certified. I got licensed to fly drones this year because I'm like, I'm going to be out there on an island and I'm going to whip my drone around. And that sounds like a fun thing to do in retirement. And so like we actively plan out like this is what we want to do in retirement, and then we're actively taking the steps. And so it's like for us, it's not just about money, but we also have our lists of goals and things that are going to get us to where we want to be, when that time comes. And I mean, if you don't do that, I don't think you're going to get to those sort of end goals. I remember when I was younger, I had a friend of mine, and I remember her saying to me like something like, "Yeah, Chris, I don't save for retirement. It's just not something that's important to me." And I remember at the time that just being this like mind-blowing concept, right? Because I was in my 20s or my 30s, and I was actively saving and saving aggressively. We've actively saved a disproportionate amount of our income over. We live like way below our means, in pursuit of that goal. And I'm not saying that that's the right thing for everyone, but having that sort of map and figuring out, financially what your number is, so that you can kind of plan your steps and plan what you got to do to get to your end goals. I don't know how else you would do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you certainly took a big picture view of your life, right? Like, you want to work to age 40 or thereabouts, retire, and whereas most people, I think they live day to day. Like the guy you were just talking about, it sounds like he lives day to day. He's got no future vision of what life could offer him.
Yeah, and I think that's unfortunately very common. I think, I talk about it like I think like, oh, saving for retirement is just a normal thing but I think for most of the population, I don't think they prioritize it. And right or wrong, different people have different values, and maybe retirement's not on their value list.
Yeah, yeah, sure enough. Actually, I do have one final question for this session. A lot of financial advisors will say to their clients, don't worry about what you want to do in retirement until you retire. Because when you retire, then you got all kinds of time to figure things out. And I kind of take the opposite view, because I think retirement brings with it a sense of urgency, in that you don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know how long your health is going to hold out. You don't know how long your loved ones' health or life is going to last. So you and your wife sound like you have things planned out, at least for the beginning part of retirement. What is your view about waiting until retirement to figure out what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think people should approach retirement with some sort of sense of urgency. To your point about, you don't know how long your health is going to hold out for, and if you don't know what you're going to do in retirement, well, you're not just going to wake up as a retired person and okay, I'm not going to wake up like, oh, I'm going to sail the world today. Like that takes some active foresight and planning. Yeah. But we had a friend of ours, husband and wife in their 60s, and I remember husband was the primary breadwinner for the family. And he was going like, I'm going to work just an extra few years because I want to increase my Canada pension plan. Mm-hmm. And I think he retired at age 67. And less than a year, this gentleman passes away. And I remember the wife, she gets the $2,500, survivor benefit. Yeah. And, he thought he was working extra years to optimize or increase their financial resources in retirement. And of course, his CPP contributions just go to the national pool, right? He doesn't actually control, and his spouse, the widow, doesn't benefit from those efforts. And so, when we're looking at our retirement and planning it with a sense of urgency, I think is important. One of the things I was looking at, Gary, I was interested. I was looking at like health statistics and life statistics, and I don't know, you might find this interesting, but like somebody age 40 today, if you're 40 years old today, there is a 10.37% chance here in Canada, 10.37% chance that you pass away before the age of 60. Wow. And right. And if you're a 50, and that's for men, right? Yeah. And for women, it's a little bit higher. A 40-year-old woman today has a 6.5% chance of passing away before the age of 60. And like for a man today, who's age 50, there's a 21% chance that they pass away before the age of 70. Now, you think about that. If you're a 50-year-old person, how many people who are 50 haven't started planning their retirement at all? They haven't started saving. And what if somebody told you, I'm telling you right now, if you're a 50-year-old man today, there's a 20% chance that you do not see your 70th birthday. Well, should we take our retirement plan with a little bit more urgency? Right? I think you should.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those statistics are alarming and surprising. I think a lot of people would find them hard to believe, but they're true. And just one off the top, well, not off the topic, but when you and your wife go sailing, do you have a crew, or is it just the two of you?
We are going to be the crew. Yeah. And
really?
So during the COVID years, Gary, we both got VHF radio licensed, and we went through our navigation courses. Past few years, what we've been doing, we've been flying off to Vancouver, and we've been spending weeks at a time with a skipper on a boat, and we've been actively taking courses and things like that out there in Vancouver. And then we have coming up here in the next few months. We're going to the Grenadines next, and we're flying in a Canadian certified skipper from Toronto down to the Grenadines, and we got a fairly large boat, but we're going to do a catamaran endorsement and an intermediate sailing certificate while we're out there. And one of the things we want to make sure that we have accomplished before we leave is in the Mediterranean, there's a few really well-known certifications in the world. The British have, I think, probably the most well-known one. And there's also one that's fairly well-known in the Mediterranean. It's called the ICC. So one of our goals is for us to both get our ICC certifications in the Mediterranean. And we're kind of going and then we'll have at least call that a bare minimum, knowledge about how to sail these boats and things like that, so that we can go out there and do most of that stuff. And, it's interesting because a lot of people who are, if you're a handy person, if you, for example, if you were a mechanic in your working life, you might be the type of person who's inclined to figure out how to service a boat engine in your retirement. That might be something that's interesting or easy for you. Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not good at those things, right? I'm good at creating companies and moving money around and stuff like that. So I'm interested in, okay, I'm going to set up company, an XYZ company in whatever country to own the boat. And, I'm going to manage, call it the financial side of what we're doing. And I'll be definitely hiring somebody to handle, the mechanical or the electrical or the things that I'm not really good at or interested in.
Yeah. Wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, you and your wife certainly have an ambitious next 5 years of your life, or however long. So
thanks, Gary.
That's great. I mean, just me, I find your story fascinating. So again, I appreciate you coming on here. But it does look like we're just about out of time for part one of our discussion on retirement planning. Thank you again, Chris, for being such a great guest. You provided tons of insight and value, so it's very much appreciated. Audience, be sure to tune in for part two of our podcast, because you don't want to miss the additional insight and value that Chris is going to provide in part two. Chris, how can our audience get in touch with you?
Sure. I mean, LinkedIn is easy. You can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Burylo. My last name's spelled Burylo. Or you could send me an email if you like. It's chris@pinnacleaf.ca. It's pinnaclealphafrank.ca.
Okay, excellent.
Great.
And I want to thank our sponsor once again, Customplan Financial Advisors. Customplan Financial Advisors is an award-winning MGA providing exceptional support and resources to the independent financial advisor. Please visit their website at customplanfinancial.com. This podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and at financialpodcast.ca. To be notified directly when new podcasts are available, please subscribe by visiting financialpodcast.ca. If you have an idea or a topic for a podcast, or if you know of someone who would make a great guest, please send an email to contact@financialpodcast.ca or info@financialpodcast.ca. We'd also love to receive your feedback from our podcasts. Thank you again, Chris. And to everyone else, have a fabulous day.
The views expressed here are those of the participants and not those of Customplan Financial Advisors, Inc., its affiliates, or subsidiaries. This is not intended to serve as a complete analysis of every material fact regarding any company, industry, or security. This presentation may contain forward-looking statements. Investors are cautioned not to place undue reliance on such statements, as actual results could vary. This site and podcasts are for general information purposes only and does not constitute investment advice and is not intended as an endorsement of any specific investment product or service. Individual investors should consult with an investment professional about their personal situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results. If you are unsure about what is the best course of action for you in your financial planning, then we suggest you consult a fee-based independent financial advisor or get in touch with us to discuss your individual situation. Our phone number is 604-687-7773.